The third pilgrimage to Israel took place in 2006. And unlike the first two, I wasn't given information through Jeshua, through JM, as to what the purposes of the trip would be, but I wasn't concerned about it because he had announced ahead of time that for the first time, there was going to be a channeling from Jeshua through JM actually on the trip itself. I figured we'd probably find out then what the trip was for. So this occurred in Galilee. We had been in the old city and in Jerusalem for several days, and then had gone to Galilee, and the group gathered, and the channeling began. Now, I had seen JM channel Jeshua maybe a dozen times, including having 8 or 9 readings on my own, so I had a very casual personal relationship with it over many years. But what happened in that room to this day shakes me because of the energy that came through. I've never experienced anything like it before or since. You may have had the experience of seeing someone experience a seizure. When they experience a seizure, it's a full-on energetic event. It's like almost like watching 2 cats fight or something in terms of the raw energy of it. Well, over in the corner of the room for 45 minutes, and they usually last just a very short time. Over in the corner of the room, pretty much the entire time that this channeling was occurring, there was a woman, middle-aged woman, and she was having the equivalent of an epileptic seizure in terms of its visual presentation the entire 45 minutes. And she was with someone who was a medical professional who said that in any other situation, if it wasn't this type of unusual spiritual situation, she would have called the emergency room right away. So this is the type of environment, but energetically speaking, it was only that thing happening over there. The real main event was straight ahead, where Jeshua was bringing through this incredible energy and this message. A lot of the message was meant for the private crowd there, so I'm not going to get into the message that much. But I will say 2 things that happened. At one point during the message, someone from the crowd ran up and put his hands on JM's legs. JM sitting, Indian style, lotus style. Puts his hands on his legs. Now, this is very unusual. This doesn't usually happen. And at that time, I'll say Jeshua, because that's who I think Jeshua's fully embodying JM. JM's experience with channeling is such that there are times when his blue eyes have turned brown as Jeshua is channeling through him. And other, remarkable things like this have happened. He recounts one time when he stood up and he said he was being fully physically incarnated by Jeshua in the channeling. And he stood up and walked around, and they said that he'd go to each person and answer their question before they asked it, and that his eyes turned from blue to brown. So there's this history of different levels and intensities of the channeling experience as Jeshua's come through JM in the Way of Mastery. Well, this was the most powerful one I'd ever experienced before or since. I asked JM, was it the most powerful he'd had? He said no, there were some others, but for me it was shook me to the core. So all of these kind of things are happening in the room. I'm being asked to go around and energetically work with people and various things. And this person comes up at one point, and Jeshua puts his hand underneath. So he's on his hands and knees. His hands are on JM's legs. So JM or Jeshua, however you want to put it, puts his hand under his chest, and another hand comes over like boom. When that happened, there was this circle of energy that just went right out through the room, and everybody was hit by it. I felt my body change by this. Jeshua jokingly says, I think everybody felt that. But I just looked at it and I felt there was nothing in this world that could have stopped that hand from coming over. It was like, in a weird sense, like if I were to create an analogy for the raw power of it, it felt like these videos of when a great white shark disengages its jaw when it's about to bite something. I mean, that's not necessarily a positive analogy, but you get the idea, this raw, incredible power. So he pulls his hands away from this man, and the man responds as if he's being electrocuted. And that happened with another person too. Another person came up, same experience. So he's like, pulling something out of him. And as he does, he's like electrocuted. So this goes on for an hour and a half, the channeling. Everybody's I'm in a kind of this altered state the whole time, feeling my hands are hot. I'm moving around and doing things as I'm told. So the time comes, and I see the channeling's getting near the end, and Joshua says to me, go to him now. Go to JM now. He's going to fall over because he's so wiped out by this. So I go over to JM, and I've noticed in photographs that standing next to JM that I'm taller than he is. I probably weigh 50 pounds more than he does. It's one of those things. He's such a big personality, you don't realize it till you see it in a photo. You think, oh, you're the same size. But so he leans over. I'm sitting right next to him, and he hits me, and I feel the energy in his body, and I'm thrown like I'm hit by a truck. Thrown probably 4 feet just right off. It was like trying to hold up 1,200 pounds. I couldn't begin to hold it up. And really, he's just leaning over on me slightly. I was embarrassed because he had to put his hand down to hold himself up. So I get bounced off him. And then my little voice, my spiritual guide, whatever you want to call it, I've learned to trust it over many years and miracles and healings that have occurred through listening to its guidance since my study of A Course in Miracles. It says, leave the room immediately. So I leave the room, and I feel my whole body is in this vibrating state. And I'm like, it's like I'm high on drugs. So I haven't done a lot of drugs, but just out of my mind. I feel like I'm walking I'm sort of so light when I'm walking that almost just like the tips of my toes are touching the ground. I'm bouncing as I walk. I've got so much energy. I go for this long walk. I walk all the way. It's a long walk, maybe half a mile up to the highway from the hotel we were staying at right on the Sea of Galilee. I walk up there, walk back, sort of really energetically walking. Probably takes me 45 minutes, this walk. And I come back. Now, this has been a while since everybody was in the room with the channeling. And outside this hotel, there's these little lounge chairs you can lie in. And I'm guided to go. I'm just listening to being told what to do. I go and kind of around the back and to the side of the hotel. I go and lie in one of these lounge chairs. I'm told to do this. Immediately, a close friend in the pathway comes out from behind. Now, this is not a main place where I would have been seen. This is definitely an out-of-the-way place. She immediately comes around and says, oh, I was guided to come find you and help you, do energy work for you, help ground you. And I'm like, cool, that's a good idea right now. So she's there with me, and I start noticing my hands are like hitting her hand out of the way and then boom, putting my hand right up on her forehead like this and staring her in the eyes. It doesn't feel like I'm the one doing it. This is coming through me. Again, I'm a baseball fan from Boston. This is freaking me out. But it's an amazing experience, too. I mean, I'm having a profound personal experience. So she sits with me for maybe half an hour. And this is someone who knows Reiki, who does a lot of advanced energy healing. And I'm really grateful for her presence. But at the end of half an hour, energy about the same. And I get up and say thank you and take off. Walk around for quite a while more. So I actually walk around and pacing, trying to figure out what to do with this energy. As I'm still like hopping, I'm still like floating. My energy is. So I walk into the hotel lobby, and I see, usually on a pilgrimage, I have a pretty strong sense about why people are there, what their issues are, and why they're there, and what their service is, and so on. But there were these three women, and I was living in this question. I have no idea why they're on this pilgrimage. And the three of them come up to me right then. They happen to be right there in the lobby as I'm walking around. And they say to me, we're here. And I think here meaning on the trip. Like, they didn't say that, but that's what it felt like to me. We're here to hold space for grounding you now. So I'm like, wow, okay. So they sit me down in the chair. And these are pretty heavy-set women. Really beautiful, warm people. And one of them puts their hands on my shoulders, standing from behind, and the other two kind of hunker down on my body on either side. So this very powerful grounding energy is hitting me. And as they do this, my mind starts going into altered states. It goes into dream state, and then boom, back in the room. This is going on for a while. I look up for a second and I see a young woman who's obviously very disturbed by what's happened in the channeling, and my eyes just meet hers for about a minute, no blinking, until her face, and I can feel this transmission coming through from me to her, and eventually she just breaks into a smile and sits down and relaxes. Then boom, back into my state, back into dream state, boom, back in the room. This goes on for quite a while. These women are beautifully loving and holding space. So at one point, I'm in a public hotel lobby too. And there's these men over to the right on a sofa with their back to me. A bunch of businessmen just having a, gathering. And they're chatting away. Lots of chatter. So at one point, I just feel my hand go like this, boom, in the direction of the businessmen. They're not looking at me. And immediately, all of them are completely quiet. And I'm like, whoa, what was that? So I continue on. I don't really want to think about this too much. And because it's kind of freaking me out, because what was that? And after about 45 minutes in the chair, I realize, this has been beautiful, but energy's still sort of 80% of where it was. I'm going to have to deal with this on my own. So I go for a walk down by the Sea of Galilee. And I'm walking back and forth on this long grassy place that goes down to the sea. And I think, well, how am I going to deal with this? Is Dave ever coming back? I'm getting scared because I feel like I'm a different being. I'm in an altered state. And I look up in the sky and I think, well, we've been out at the night in Galilee, each of the trips many times, and stars filling the skies. And I'm thinking, I've never seen a shooting star here. Maybe if I bring a little ego into this, it'll lower my frequency and I'll get to come back to being me. So I intentionally try to bring ego in by saying, well, that thing with the businessman felt like a power of some kind. So I'm going to insist now as a egoic self that I see a shooting star now. And thank God, no shooting star. And I say, no, you're not understanding. I want to see a shooting star now. No shooting star. So I think this is good. And I'm told then to go down and sit by the water, put my feet in the water of this little chair, plastic chair sitting in the water. It's very pleasant, lapping with little waves lapping, and the moon is there reflecting on the water, calming me down. And I start feeling a tiny bit more calm, and I start reflecting on what's happened. And I think about this thing with the businessmen, because I'd done it a second time too, and they'd been quiet again. Not quite as quiet, but they did definitely quiet down a second time. I think, what is this? Is this like a power? And I thought, well, if it is, I'm not saying it is, but if it is, I did know one thing, which is that I absolutely wanted to have nothing to do with how it was used. And I had a memory of it being a familiarity with it. And this sense that the reason I didn't want to be the one who decided when it was used, it wasn't because I was noble, it wasn't because I was smart, it was because I remembered what it was like to misuse it. So when I came to that realization, I closed my eyes and I imagined this circle around me. And the circle represented my absolute determination that I wasn't going to be the one that used this. And I would never do that. I didn't want to. I never want, may God's will, if it's a real thing, may God's will always be in charge of how it's used, period. So my eyes are closed, and I feel this circle come into my chest, and it goes boom. And my eyes are still closed, and I have this deep realization that, no, I don't want to be in charge of this. I don't want to have anything to do with this, using this myself. And before I open my eyes, I have this feeling like, oh God, I feel that something about this process has relaxed me. I feel like I'm finally coming back to being me. And I'm relaxed, so I sit back and I open my eyes. And I look up in the sky, and for the first time in all the hours of sitting under the beautiful celestial sky of the Sea of Galilee, I see shooting star, right on cue. And something happened in my awareness at that time, which I just thought, this can't be real, this world. This has to be a dream. How could that be coordinated to be perfect the way it was? Shooting star in the sky over Galilee. A year later, I sat with the two men who had gone up to be charged by Joshua, and they both had the same experience about going around and blessing people for an hour afterwards or hours afterwards. I didn't know that, and we sat discussing this at the Sea of Galilee and sharing our experiences of what was the third pilgrimage to Israel. Thank you for listening.